Woo! Mm.
It's the end of the road. We made it.
It's a bittersweet, is what it is.
You excited? You ready to do this?
I'm torn. Like, yeah, I'm excited, but it's the end of it. You know,
Yeah.
like I've always felt that like Boy Meets World was like 3 or 4 different shows in one show. Like season 6 and 7, the college years are its own thing. I think seasons 4 and 5 are their own thing. I think seasons 2 and 3 are their own thing. But season 1 just has its own unique feel and style to it. And while I'm looking forward to seeing the show evolve and the characters grow, I'm just gonna miss this like really. This feels the most TGIF out of all.
Yes, this
seasons.
does. This feels like a TGIF episode, and I think it is very interesting to see the origins of this story, because so many of these episodes I forgot about, or I didn't even know about. So to like revisit it, it's like, oh yeah. Yeah, When's
the last time you've watched through the series?
I haven't watched through the series in years. Like, I always would watch through like different seasons a while back, but never like from episode 1.
So really, this is your first time being reintroduced to it as an adult.
Yeah, exactly. This is absolutely the first time for me. So,
wow.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm excited.
And how did the season just? I guess we'll save it for our recap episode.
No. I mean, like, there's no wrong with asking, at least. And you're right. I think we will get into this more when we do our season review. But I don't know. It was a good season. I'm excited to know that the show does more. You know what I mean?
And it does so much more that my whole reaction to the season was like, oh wow, this feels like we're crawling when the show, I know, starts to run at a certain point.
Exactly. But I mean, we went out on a good episode. I feel like it wasn't the best, but it was a good one.
Not a fan of it.
No, you're not a fan of this episode?
It was okay. It was just, for a finale, I wanted more.
I would say the same, but
the way they handle Minkus, it upsets me.
Yeah.
It feels like an afterthought.
We're gonna go to it because I really, really wanted to address that, but I have like notes on that in general. So, are you ready to get into it?
Oh yeah. Let's do it.
Okay. What up, bros?
What up, bruh?
And welcome to Bruh Meets World.
When it's Bruh Meets motherfucking world.
Your Boy Meets World fan cast. I'm Ceej.
And I'm your boy T Dizzle.
Okay, so thank you guys so much. Where you at? What's going on, T?
This episode was okay for me. I like I said, I was expecting more for a finale. I guess I'm spoiled with modern television too.
Yes.
That like I want a finale to like really like give me something to like hang on
Walk
to
away
for the
with,
summer break.
Yeah.
And I mean, this was just before that became really like a standard thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, as we were saying earlier, it's TGIF. It just wasn't this, I guess, big of a deal as we get into with later TV shows.
Well, even in the 90s, I felt like there was just that thing of, like, if it's a finale, someone's getting married, someone's breaking up, someone's having a baby, someone, there's someone
sweep.
died.
Yeah.
There's certain things that happen in sweeps that even I saw in Friends and a few other shows that I just never saw, or at least, I don't know, maybe I do see it in Boy Meets World later on, but I don't remember there being like really, really strong finales until the series finale.
Yeah, that series finale, yo. Gotcha. Yeah. Okay, so before we get into the episode, let's start with our segment, You Better Ask Somebody.
You better ask somebody.
Where we read the questions that you guys have sent to us. The question this week is, what are some of your other favorite TV shows besides Boy Meets World?
Ooh, are we keeping this to a time period or just in general?
No, just what are your favorite TV shows?
Wow.
I know this is going to be a while because you guys don't understand how much we love television.
And it's just that whole thing of just like certain shows don't age as well.
Yeah.
Like Fresh Prince used to be a really big deal in my life, but I don't feel like it ages as well as I hoped it would.
You really don't think so? I need to honestly watch that over again. I haven't really.
It's okay. It's just it's Will's character is really misogynistic at points.
Yeah. 90s
so
misogyny.
Yeah.
How much have we dealt with that this season?
Yeah, totally. And so like especially when you have a character that's like a Playboy character, you get that a lot in 90s TV. So
Zach Morris,
you go first with this because I'm struggling to
so just
down
some of our favorite. Well, I know that for me and TC, we've mentioned it before. Happy Endings is one of the
ABC
shows.
show Happy Endings. 3 seasons of greatness, guys. It's
really, really good. I don't know if you feel the same way, but like Scrubs is another one that's up there for me.
I would say Friends is probably like when I think of just like the epitome of just like a sitcom. Friends is up there for me.
See, I like Friends and Seinfeld. They are classics, but also I was like huge into them when I was 12. And so like the fact that everyone's getting back on the bandwagon, like everyone's like, oh, I'm watching it now on Netflix. I was like, I've already literally have done all of those seasons like 20 times over.
I remember watching Friends live, like the seasons as they were premiering, like pretty early on. So I go back with that.
Yeah. And then another series that like I watch all the time. There are 2 that I watch when I'm like just in like a mood. And that is Gilmore Girls and Grey's Anatomy.
Oh, okay. So I'll tell you this. I do the same thing with The Office and Parks and Rec.
Those are good. Those are good ones.
I'll just have them on in the background when I'm working. Always Sunny is another one.
That's what I'm like. What shows do I like? If I'll just put on for like no real reason to like have in the background, and I know it so well. The first few seasons of Archer is like that for me, and the first few seasons of American Dad. Those are 2 where it's like literally I don't even have to look at the screen. I know every word that's going to come out.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to pinpoint down. Like, I feel like I'm not even considering dramas right now because I'm such in a sitcom mindset. But like Stranger Things is great. I wouldn't call it my favorite though. I need more of a heads up for a question like this.
At first you were like, don't tell me the questions ahead of time, and now you're like, I'm gonna need a moment. So
yeah, this is just like this is a hard one for sure.
All right, so we will allow TC to answer this question later. Maybe you could just answer it for them when we do the season recap.
Sure.
Okay, so let's get into this show. The tell me about it for this episode is Corey thinks he has a superpower when Mr. Feeny falls ill.
I think it's as accurate as the premise is ridiculous.
All right, I'll give you that because it is. I was like, that's a weird way to put that, and it's stupid all around. But okay.
Yeah, and the entire episode, I was kind of rolling my eyes at this whole like Corey has superpowers thing.
Yeah, it was a little stupid and cheesy, but you know. I like the takeaway of this one. Anyway, so getting into the episode, we start off with the boys making a shake.
Oh my gosh, this scene drove me up the damn wall.
I had thoughts because so all right, just to get into it, the boys are making a shake and they are just like throwing all these kind of things into the blender.
Well, at first it's just like, hey, let's put peanut butter and bananas, and you're like, okay, this seems pretty normal. And then they're like, let's just throw in some raw eggs, and they're like, oh, Stallone does it, sure.
Yeah, there's this whole bit about like doing it because Stallone does it, and they point out that like Stallone is like 5'2" or something like that, and he's like, you're like 2'4", so yeah. And it is a start because I think it's just like a play off of the fact that Sean is growing. You can see it even when they're at the table. Sean's so much taller than Corey at this point.
Yeah. Well, this just Sean is the absolute worst in this moment because
I knew
Corey's like, hey, let's be responsible and put a lid on because we don't want to be kids that make a mess. Haha, we're not that.
Oh, yeah,
and Sean's like, fuck that, bro. We absolutely are. Takes the lid off and then pushes this movie thing. It goes everywhere.
Yeah, so my whole thing with this was I liked that they acknowledged the moment. They're like, we're two kids in a kitchen with a blender. We don't have to be those people. And Sean's like, but I want...
They elected to be.
Exactly.
They chose to be.
And it goes everywhere. And the moment it goes everywhere is when Amy shows up. And first of all, Sean is very much like I would never do this at my house.
Rude. Damn, this is why we don't invite you over anymore, Sean.
And Amy opens the door, sees it everywhere, and just like turns around. I was like, can you imagine coming home at the end of the day?
Oh no, man.
A long day. You just had traffic and all this other stuff. You know that you're going to be dealing with your kids. And it's like, it's really funny how as an adult you watch stuff like this and you're just like, nope.
Yeah, no, not at all.
And I understood her just turning around so much. Like when you're younger, it's like a comedic bit, but as an adult, you're like, nope, that is the only response for you not to kill that kid.
That's the only thing.
So, and Corey's like, don't worry, I'll clean it up and all this other stuff. But
Corey sees Amy, and she's like, says to Sean, you have to have my back. You have to tell her that I wanted to use the lid. I'm lid boy.
Yeah.
Which I realized Corey does this joke a lot.
That's what I said. Yeah, he does this a lot. I made note of it. He is a lot of like, I'm lid boy, he's accomplice boy.
Yeah.
There's like all of these little moments where he does this. I was like, what is
It's almost
this?
like a catchphrase that never really caught on.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know what is with this. Of course, this is the one continuality that Boy Meets World made sure to include.
Yeah, the silly ass joke.
I wonder what Michael Jacobs, like, where he got it from. Do you think it was like something that his kid did and he just thought it would be fun, or what?
I don't know, but the fact that they do it in multiple episodes, they do it again in this episode, I think.
Yeah, they do it a little bit later on, and
it's just a silly ass joke that I don't know. It's interesting.
You're like, why do you keep doing this? But anyway, so to kind of segue us into the rest of the episode, while cleaning up, Sean makes a note that
no, not while cleaning up. Amy leaves, and then they're just like, let's study geography now. And
no, they're starting to clean up
everywhere. They're still such a mess. They clean up like a small amount. They wipe down like a single part of a counter, and they're like, all right, let's get back to studying. You can see in the background the entire time I'm going crazy looking at the mess they've left on the. I'm
letting you rant because you clearly feel strongly about this. But again, they use it as a segue because the whole point is that they get some on the geography book, and that's like, oh, they're supposed to be studying for this test. But you're right. For the most part, they just leave it there. Like,
for who? For Amy to clean?
Do you want ants? Because that's how you get ants. Also, really funny. We already know that Alan does that, so maybe Corey's.
And that's what I was thinking. Corey learned it from Alan because he knows that Alan can leave food thrown everywhere, and Amy will come pick it up. Yo, we need to stop this.
There's not a black child in the world who would be able to get away with that.
I know. Hell no.
So anyway, the boys talk about that they should be studying for this test.
They make zero attempt to study.
No, they just keep talking about it every single moment.
They literally read like one sentence and they're like, this is too hard.
Yep, exactly. So, and then again, going back to like the way that their minds work, they go, why should we have to study? Why doesn't Feeny carry any of this weight? And it's also funny when you consider that as adults, we know that Feeny's probably underpaid. He's dealing with all these badass kids.
Overworked.
Yep. Yeah. And then they're like, Feeny's not doing any. We have the hard part here. Which is like very much of how kids think.
The fact that Feeny's able to put so many hours into the school and everything, and he's still able to maintain the most gorgeous garden.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like he really, like he has this, I mean, don't get me wrong, like it's probably not great to be a teacher, but I feel like Feeny kind of has figured it out. Like, he has a good work-life balance.
Yeah. Well, also he doesn't have, like we see, he doesn't really have like a wife or anything. So a lot of his time is
for now.
Oh no! I like this. I like that this is a Feeny-centric episode because I like that we kind of come back to some of the best things about Boy Meets World in this episode.
Well, the pilot was that whole Romeo and Juliet confrontation between him and Feeny.
Yeah, I remember. But I'm just saying, like, even in the next scene when we do the whole Sean and Minkus bit, like it's very, again, it's the formula that works for this.
Sure.
Okay, so again, the guys are kind of pointing out that, you know, they kind of wish that Feeny would get sick because he's never missed a day of school. And then they were like, well, maybe he doesn't know. And I was like,
yeah.
Which, again, it's
we
really...
should tell him.
We should tell him that he gets paid vacation leave. And I was like, it's probably like a week. And it's...
Well, no, they said he gets 1 week of vacation time. And I was just like, wow, teachers only get 1 week?
Exactly. This is, again, it's funny because as a kid, they're like, oh, it's like when you tell a 10-year-old that you'll give them $5 and they're like, oh, well, not a 10-year-old, but like a kid. And you're just like, oh,
sure.
Yeah, $5 is so much money. You're like, no, that isn't.
Yeah, and like a week of sick time,
that's nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're just like, he's never missed a day of school. And so essentially they're just going to have to study for this test. And that's the opening scene.
Yeah. I mean, I felt like they did a really good job setting up the story in this.
Exactly. Then we have our theme song.
Despite the fact they never clean up the mess. I just want to make that clear. They never go back to it.
Then we have our theme song.
Yeah, R.I.P. the theme song.
I have to admit, I watched it nostalgically this time because I knew this was the last time. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna miss you."
You know what? If for whatever reason I'm wrong, and we start the second season, and I hear that damn theme song again, the nostalgia I feel for it right now is gonna quickly go away, turn into just deep hate. I cannot do another season of this shit.
Yeah, I don't think we do. I'm pretty sure this is the last time we hear this theme song. So,
oh man.
Okay, so moving on to the next scene, we go into class. Topanga's doing yoga upside down, of course, and it's, I don't know, they're making fun of her. They've a lot of jokes about Topanga's hair and the perm and all this other stuff.
Sure. And you know what? The first thing I thought too when we went to the classroom scene is that I couldn't help but think like, oh, Minkus.
Oh yeah.
Because this is our last Minkus episode.
Right on before that, the boys are talking about the test and like how anxious they are for the test, and Minkus comes over and he's just like, it sounds to me like you guys didn't study. And that leads to a lot of really fun bits that I'm going to play.
Oh, yeah, their impressions of each other. It's great.
I love their impressions of each other.
Minkus, you can get all the A's you want. It's still not going to make you popular.
That's right. I can just hear you 10 years from now. People. How many times do I have to tell you? If you save your receipts, you won't have to worry about an audit.
And I can hear you 10 years from now. Your Honor, dude, I like the plea bargain.
The way that they imitated each other was so much fun to me. I
thought Ryder did a fantastic impression.
He did a really good Norris, and I loved it. His whole thing, it was funny. And then
and also like Sean seems to have a basic understanding of what accountants do.
Yeah, so exactly.
I don't know that I did when I was his age.
No, I definitely didn't. But also to see Minkus like do the hair thing as well, it was really good.
Oh man, I'm gonna miss this kid.
Again, this is a good relationship, and we'll get into it when we do the epilogue. But yeah, I'm really, this is a big shout out to Lee Norris because you made this season. It was a really good season.
Yeah, you were so good. The fact that the show is 7 seasons long and Minkus is only in 1 season, he still remains so memorable. There's so many other random characters that kind of pop up and disappear as the show goes on, but I feel like he's easily the most memorable. And people just kind of think of him as part of the show, even though he was only on it for such a short period of time. So
yeah, exactly.
Really impactful stuff.
Yeah, I'm just really happy. And again, you can see why. He nails this role. He nails this character. And his impact was very important. And I just think, yeah, I really, really liked I like this character that we get to have. These moments we get to have with him. All right, but going back to the story, of course, the boys were talking about the test, and a sub walks in, and we get a new substitute, this Miss Chase.
Fine ass black woman walks in.
I was like, okay, Miss Chase. Mm-hmm. And they gave her a speaking role.
Me. Yeah.
It was funny. I was like, all right, cool. Especially since we had just talked about like diversity or something like that.
Sure.
In the show. So I like that we get this black substitute teacher who again is on her stuff, because what I really like is she asks the class what they're supposed to be doing. And Minkus, of course, is that kid who's like, oh, we were supposed to have a test, but Sean like interrupts him and is just like, nope. And Corey's
in the most suspicious way possible, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, they're kids, and they're just like, oh, we're going to get away with this. We were just supposed to do, like, poetry. But what they don't know is she's like, all right, cool, because I did poetry. That was, like, my major. And my dissertation was on Beowulf, I think she called. That's right, Beowulf?
Yeah, it was Beowulf.
Yeah. And so I just thought that was hilarious because they realized, oh, man, the one thing we lied about.
Don't get me wrong, I think Miss Chase is fierce. I didn't really care for this, only because, one, I don't really believe Feeny wouldn't leave a lesson plan, but maybe if it was an emergency, whatever. But, like, she's teaching poetry. Like, this is a geography class. She's not even going to try to teach geography.
Well, she didn't know that it's geography. And remember, Feeny's classroom, they do everything in this classroom. We were just studying Romeo and Juliet and Shakespeare like 2 episodes.
Guess, but still, like, they made a big deal about the geography test, their geography books. I just feel like that was just something like she should have at least attempted to teach geography.
Well, she doesn't know.
I don't know. I felt like because there was some mention of it being geography based at some point in that class. Maybe I'm wrong, but I felt like it was mentioned. But either way, she has a dissertation. She has at least a master's degree. Why is she doing substitute teaching? What's happening?
Have you been in this economy?
This was 1993, man. I don't know. She has a master's degree.
Also, as we've said before, there's nothing wrong with being a teacher. Maybe this is what she wants to do.
She's a substitute teacher.
Yeah, but maybe this is like her getting her feet wet. You don't know. Don't be hating on Miss Chase.
I'm not. I guess I don't know. I guess I just. Also, what is epic poetry exactly that she has this degree in? Epic poetry is exactly what Beowulf is. I do know that is a segment. There are lots of poems that are told by stories, and it's just like they might as well be a book. That's what that is. I guess I've never seen like a master's degree program specifically for epic poetry or like a segment of poetry before.
Really? No, I know that thing exists, but then again, you should know it exists. But I went to a fine art school, so I'm aware of all that nonsense.
Maybe.
All right. So anyway, next scene is the kids are in the cafeteria and they talk about they can't believe that Feeny actually missed school. And this is when Corey's like, yeah, I did that. You know, I wish for him to be sick. And Sean's like, what? No, you didn't. He's like, yeah, yesterday while we were supposed to be studying, you remember? And this is where Topanga introduces the power of the mind. And that will, I guess if you force of will, right? Is that what she says?
Yeah. I will say something about Topanga. I will come back to this, but at the beginning of the scene, she says something about Zeus. Do you remember this?
Yes. She goes, Corey says, do you know who you have to thank for this? And she goes, Zeus.
I'm very confused as to Topanga's belief system because in some episodes she seems to be like more of a like naturalist. And then in this one, she's like worshiping a Greek god, and I just don't know exactly where she lands.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of like them just throwing anything that could be a weird aspect into Topanga's character. Yeah. But also, if we want to think about it, I would say that she's young and she's exploring all of these things. So she has no real belief system other than alternative thinking. You know what I mean?
Okay. Okay.
That's the excuse I'll do it. Yeah. So anyway, this is when, of course, as I was saying, Corey is like, "Oh yeah, I'm sick boy. I have the power to make people sick with my mind." And then they say he says he's going to use it on Minkus, and Minkus, sure enough, walks over and says he's not feeling well.
Yeah,
but
it freaks Sean and Topanga out.
Yeah, they're both like, that's weird. But it turns out that he isn't feeling well because he heard that Mr. Feeney's in the hospital, which it makes sense that Minkus would be the one who actually finds out what happened with Mr. Feeney.
Because of their close relationship?
Well, no, Minkus has always shown that he cares about Feeny. You know,
I guess I'm just like I'm. It's the middle of the school day. This kid's it's a kid in school just like everyone else. No one's just like, "Hey, Minkus, come over here. We have something important to tell you." I don't know. I'm just curious as to.
Yeah, I'm sure. I guarantee you, he went and asked someone. He checked into why Mr. Feeney was gone.
Okay, yeah, that I believe. Like him, just like going to the front office and just being like, "Hey, have you guys heard anything about Mr. Feeney?" I could see that happening.
Exactly, because yeah, that to me is just what would happen. Because we just talked about the fact that Feeney's never missed a day of school. So for Minkus, this would be out of the ordinary, and he would want an answer.
And he didn't leave a lesson plan.
Exactly. And we find out later why. But yeah, as you said, it was an emergency. He didn't have time to leave a lesson plan. And that's very unlike Mr. Feeney. So. Yeah. So anyway, Topanga tells Corey that karma's coming for him because he was just bragging about how he got Mr. Feeney to stay home because he was sick. And now it's not just sick, he's in the hospital. And Corey doesn't want any of the credit. Of course.
Question for you. Yes. How old do you think Mr. Feeney is?
60-something?
Because when they go to the hospital, there's never like that, like, oh, wait, this could be like something that, like, there's never like that hint of scare of death. There's just like he's just in the hospital, he'll get better. And I'm just like, I guess I'm just trying to figure out his age in this, then why that wouldn't play a part in like them thinking like, well, he is getting old, or I don't know.
I would say, dude, the entire second half of this is about how Corey assumes Feeney's gonna die.
Yeah, but it's never based on like the fact that I don't know. I guess I imagine an elderly person going to the hospital. Like I imagine there just being that idea of age playing a part in it.
And you're right. It is like even because we find out later that it's actually appendicitis, and that has nothing to do with his age either. Like the reason he's in the hospital, I can see that. But yeah, so with that, the next scene, I like this little bit of them making fun of Amy's writing. I'm usually not behind it because, you know, Amy's my queen and I think she deserves everything. But I just like that it's like a running bit that even Corey's like, what are you writing?
Well, it's also they take turns trying to interpret it, and it's all over the place.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that was a little fun bit. But we get more of this power of positive thinking. So like the power of the mind thing, because Amy says she's doing it to make sure George feels better, and she feels that by like giving him this card, it will in fact help him or motivate him to feel better or something like that.
And Corey starts freaking out, thinking like, oh, you know, could this be used for, you know, negative thinking as well? And I guess the entire time the scene was happening, I was kind of rolling my eyes like, is this really what the episode is about? Just like, like Corey thinking he may have a superpower. Like, is that really what we're doing right now?
I don't know if it was like really a superpower or even like Corey really thinking he had a superpower because again,
he had the ability.
He immediately after the last episode, he was like, "Oh, Sean, you just said yourself that it's stupid. It's not that real." But I think if you want to go back to what you're always telling me, which is about this entire series is Corey learning things. This is a moment of Corey thinking he's the center of the world again. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, because I willed it, it happened. And learning that there is a lot of people do stand behind this idea of your thoughts put things out there. So be careful. You know, like that's what I think is what we're really dealing with. Not necessarily Corey going around being like, I can make people sick. That's my interpretation.
Okay, if that's the case, explain the epilogue to me, because
again, the epilogue is a fun answer to that, but again, they don't say anything about superpowers with the epilogue.
No, but they make something disappear that actually never comes back.
Yeah. All right, you seem bitter, and we're not there yet.
I'm sorry.
So even though we just had this, Corey runs upstairs and tells Eric that he has a gift. And Eric essentially tells him he's delusional because Feeny has appendicitis. This is where we find out where that is. And I like that, again, no one's really... I was like, it's just the whole I have a superpower thing is completely dismissed by everyone.
Did you get that vibe that Eric thought it was kind of cool that Feeny was in the hospital?
No,
like he was like, yeah, they did the surgery last Tuesday. Like he had like a big smile on his face when he was telling Corey. It just seemed like he was like, he thought it was cool in some way.
No, honestly, I think maybe it was like his delivery, but I didn't think Eric thought it was cool. I think he was just like making fun of Corey. You know what I mean? It's just like, He's already in the hospital. You're an idiot type thing.
Yeah.
That's how I saw it. Again, this was a very short scene, so it doesn't really matter. Because in the next scene, which was really funny.
Oh, no. There is something about that scene that I wanted to talk about.
Well, yeah, go for it.
Just right before the scene ends, Corey goes to a windowsill and he prays to God.
Yes. Okay. This is
something I wanted to dive into just a little bit.
I'm actually really glad that you brought that up. Keep going.
There's been a few moments throughout the series of the show where the characters will talk about God or pray to a God, and I think it's really interesting, the choice of it, because it is a choice, and maybe this was just something that was more common, but I never saw like any other television family pray like that before.
Yeah, I don't know. You mean like this?
Like directly, I don't know, and maybe I'm just not remembering a lot of it. Maybe I just don't remember like Family Matters or Full House, like them praying a lot or talking to God.
Like not a lot, but like it's not like we do this all the time in this series.
Yeah, I know. It is rare.
It is a TV trope for sure. The whole give me a sign type thing, you know.
I guess I just know that there's a specific episode in season 4 where Sean joins a cult that the show clearly has a position, and I'm just curious as to where it is, because we're like this was vague enough that it just left me curious, I guess.
All right, so what can you clarify a little bit, because I'm a little bit confused.
Like I'm curious as to the role that God plays in the Matthews household, that Corey would think to pray when we've never heard anyone mention church or anything like that. Like I remember like when I was a kid watching an episode of Alf and the family went to church. Like it's a thing that did happen. On black sitcoms especially. Yeah. But it's never been mentioned on the show, and I was just curious as to what his relationship even is with God.
Honestly, if we're being completely honest, I feel like it's a matter of convenience, like any other modern Christian. It's just like you ask when you need something, and then any other time he doesn't really think about it. I believe that the Matthews have probably been to church, but we know for a fact that they don't go to church every Sunday. They do other things.
Yeah, that's mostly it. It was something that they had been to before, even talked about, but just never.
Yeah, I guarantee you it's like they go for
Easter,
Christmas, and yeah. They do that whole thing, and again, it's not common, but when they do, it's like, what else?
Sure.
And,
okay.
You know, he needed it, so yada yada yada. Anywho, in this next scene, we have Miss Chase. Of course, they're going to Beowulf, and Corey interrupts the class, and he's just saying all this other stuff. And having watched this the first time, not knowing that it was a dream sequence, I got
mad.
Oh, are you kidding me? I was waiting, and then because Corey interrupts, he's just like saying all these things, and I was like, "Have you lost your mind?"
He's like, "I don't think we should have to learn, and I think you should make cupcakes." And I'm like, "What is happening?" But you know what? Even knowing the reveal, I'm still upset by it.
Okay,
I'm still upset that this black woman role had to have a 12-year-old talk to her that way, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I can see my whole thing was I was waiting for her to come get him. Because in reality, I was like, if this was like a real scene, they better have her go off. Because I just don't see this, happening. But then I was like, oh, it's a dream. The moment the cupcake showed up, I was like, oh, this is a dream. So it's all going to be, whatever.
Yeah, and this whole Boy Meets World Inception thing was kind of weird for me too.
Yeah, I was like, what? It was a little weird. Also,
it's a dream within a dream within a dream.
Well, yeah, I make a note that they get like a budget or something for special effects because they used a lot of 90s special effects in this episode.
Yeah. Because this is a dream that they're in the classroom.
Yes.
And then Corey wakes up in his room.
And it's also still a dream. Yep. And he keeps dreaming that Feeny is dead. That what it started off as a cough put Feeny into the hospital, and he's dead now, and that's something that Corey can't get out of his head.
Yeah. And then there's another scene, right, in the kitchen?
Yeah. Well, so what happens is in our next scene, after all of the constant thoughts of dead Feeny haunting, quote unquote, Corey, Corey goes downstairs Corey's at the kitchen. Alan comes downstairs and he's just like, oh, Corey, like, what are you even doing up? You look terrible. And Corey kind of tells him that essentially, they have the discussion about guilt, and that Corey wished that Mr. Feeny would be sick. Mr. Feeny ended up in the hospital, and he just... Again, what I like here is Alan starts with well, why'd you wish that? Like, what was the purpose of it? He was like, so I didn't have to take the test. And Alan kind of bonds with him over a story of his former teacher, which, can we talk about this?
Real fast. When Alan comes down, Corey is drinking coffee. I thought it was cool that Corey knew how to make coffee at 12. I sure as hell did not.
Did you not? Dude.
No, not at all.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, there's nothing wrong with that. But, yeah, I totally knew how. I was, like, drinking coffee like crazy.
The one other thing I wanted to mention was, so Corey's feeling all this guilt, but I feel like the reason Corey's feeling all this guilt is because, and I've mentioned this before, there's some times where Feeny himself will use guilt as a tool to teach Corey a lesson. And I feel like because there's that dynamic at place, Corey's more prone to feeling a personal guilt for something he really had nothing to do with at all.
Exactly. And I did think about your whole relationship with guilt because we did talk about that recently. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know, but I do want to get into the Miss Purge story, and I want to get into the Miss Purge story because it starts off with Alan saying, despite her name, she doesn't look that well.
I mean, I'm not surprised at all hearing that from Alan.
Yeah, it was just like what are you like? What was that? What was the purpose of that? And what I like is even Corey's like, all right, what does this have to do with me? What are you like? Where are you even at with this?
Yeah.
Bring it back to what we were talking about. And
he's just having like a guy moment. Like he has one with Feeny later. Like he's just shooting the shit, talking about chicks.
But what's funny is Corey's not. Alan is for some reason. And Corey's like, all right, can we focus? Well, like, what does this even have to do with it? What does her looks have to do with the story that you're supposed to be telling me? Which again is kind of the question. What was the purpose of that? For any other reason. So anyway, they talk about the teacher. And apparently, Alan got the job that he did because he was able to do long math in his head or something like that. And he was like, that's a skill that I knew. He was like, I used to tell people it was a superpower. But I actually only did it because of Miss Perch. But during the time when she was trying to teach us, I would always be like, I'm never going to need this, which is kind of what Corey's been saying this entire episode.
Yeah, and I think just in that moment, just Corey kind of learns to appreciate Feeny a little bit more. Just knowing, like, Alan does help him get some, like, foresight into the idea that because you're learning something that's not interesting to you now, doesn't mean that it won't be relevant later on. So, I mean, it's a good scene.
Yeah, exactly. And then that's when, after Alan leaves, is when we get more of the Feeny special.
Now, this is what I wanted to talk about. So, I have a theory that this whole scene was a dream.
Oh, really?
As soon as Alan leaves, Corey looks down, Feeny's in his coffee, and then there's like 100 Feenies around the kitchen.
Yeah.
That's a dream, right?
Well, see, that's when I was gonna say, I didn't think it was a dream, but I was like, we may want to get Corey checked out. I mean, like,
so you thought it was a hallucination?
Yeah, I just think it's like a projection.
I based on the previous scene, I would imagine that there was 3 dreams happening, sequences that we saw, this being one of them, and Corey just taught himself the lesson because he's smarter than he realizes, because that's what the show is all about.
Here's the thing. There's nothing to really discredit that. It's not like Alan comes up to him later and was like, I really enjoyed that talk we had last night. So you're not wrong. It could totally just be another dream.
Man, this show is on so many levels. Inception stole its whole premise from this, y'all.
Okay, just calm down. In our next scene, Corey has gone to visit Feeny in the hospital, which I actually really liked. He took a bus.
I didn't like him taking a city bus, without his parents knowing where he was. This is the second time he's done this. He did the same thing when him and Eric were following Amy on her Wednesday night date with Alan.
Yep, I remember.
And that just bothered me then too. I'm just like, maybe this is a city thing that, like, you just let kids take the bus all willy-nilly. But
yeah, I think it is, actually, now that I think about it. I don't know, and you're right, like the fact that they don't know that he's there means something, but I do kind of like, I just remember in New York, I mean, it is New York, but like, yeah, kids just kind of, they get on the bus and they go places. They have like their own form of independence.
And you know what? If this was South Street, then maybe. These kids are in the suburbs.
So what does that mean?
I don't imagine a lot of city buses going through the suburbs like that. I don't know. Maybe I need to know the Philadelphia area better. It seems strange that, like, not just that he took a bus, he didn't tell adults where he was going, and he just got on the bus and left. That seems weird to me.
Well, no, not to me. I feel like that's always like again, that's a child's form of independence. Like, I feel like that is something you see very often, where like a kid can just get on a bus. They may not always, like, I feel like kids know that is a mode of transportation they have access to.
I guess I never thought to get on a bus by myself when I was like that young.
And see, I rode the bus independently all the time as a kid. Like, to go to the library, I would take the bus. But again, my mother knew what I was doing. Yeah,
that's what I mean. You wouldn't just like, you're like, if your mom came home and you like, oh hey, I took a bus to downtown, or whatever, and she didn't know, like, wouldn't she freak out?
I don't know. Again, that one's weird. That particular one is weird. But like, I just don't see taking the bus as that outrageous. I feel like it's a very common thing for a kid to do. But again, I feel like they should know where you're going.
Yeah, that's what makes it weird for me. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But while he's visiting Feeny and we have the plant, which you wanted to talk about the plant for a little bit?
Oh, I just the geranium that Corey brings Feeny is, there's a scene in the finale. I know we've had a few scenes like this where in the series finale of the show, they do flashbacks to previous episodes. And there's a flashback in the finale to Feeny and Corey talking about the geranium. And I believe it's the same geranium that Feeny uses to teach Corey a lesson in the finale about how Topanga needs to go to New York in order to continue growing. I believe that plant is this geranium that Corey gives him now.
Honestly, I was going to say the same thing. I was going to ask the same thing. If this plant came back later, because they make such a very big deal about it.
Yeah, because even in the finale where they point to the plant is the same place where later in the episode they plant it, they pot it.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's really cool. And I liked this because I was like, this plant it's a signature of Feeny. like, you know, Feeny and Garden.
And just the fact that he can just teach a lesson with anything.
Yeah. But also we get to meet a little Miss Nurse Jill. And Nurse Jill and Feeny. I was like, I'll get some Feeny.
Yeah, they that was a note I took too. I was like, something's going on with them. Well, yeah, some nighttime play.
A cute little flirtation when she came in, and you can tell there had already been like a history. And then like Corey, like afterwards, Corey's like, oh, she seemed nice, and Feeny was like, yeah, she does. And that was when they're like, oh, did we just have like a dude moment? Did we have like this thing where I understood that you are a sexual being?
Yeah, that was an odd little moment, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, it's odd, but it's like it's good. Again,
him and Nurse Jill were not just flirting. By the way, I don't think that's what was happening at all. I think she was in there giving him the long sponge bath.
You are ridiculous, but I'm not surprised. But yeah, so you know, I just like we get this little scene about Corey just basically being like, I wanted to make sure you weren't going to die. And Feeny's like, in a very strange way, you've kept me alive. And again, I just like this bond and this scene of...
This was a good part. This was the highlight of the episode, I think.
Yeah. And the really Boy Meets World moment, cutesy little thing, is when Corey's like, thank you. And Feeny's like, for what? And Corey's like, I don't know yet. And
that was the Michael Jacobs moment of the episode.
Yeah, for sure. It was just really cute, and I really enjoyed it. So in the next scene, we see, you had mentioned Feeny's duck earlier, was really important because Corey's trying to fix it, and he's in Feeny's garden trying to fix this thing. Alan comes out and is like, oh, let me go get some tools for you. And then that's when Feeny comes back, and we see that he still has the plant, and he's going to plant it in the garden. He also makes a joke about Nurse Jill being replaced with Nurse Larry, so that's why he left the hospital a little bit earlier than he was supposed to.
He was only sticking around because of those sponge baths, bro. That's the only reason.
Again, there's nothing that really says otherwise, so I'll give you this one. But I was thinking to myself, I was like, should Feeny be doing all this walk around and stuff? He just had surgery.
Yeah, he's like planting, he's bending over. He doesn't seem like he's in any kind of pain.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, that to me seemed very...
How old is this dude? If he's like 55, okay, but if he's like 65...
And he just had like appendicitis and all this other stuff. It's just like, it feels like it's a lot for him to be moving around. I felt like they could have even had Corey like do the planting. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or just be like, take it from him and Feeny kind of like walk him through or something.
Exactly. It just doesn't seem well thought out to me.
Well, I think the reason too was so Feeny can give this like that gorgeous little final monologue of his where he talks about how, the plant will grow if it has a proper gardener. And we're kind of referring to this relationship between Corey and Feeny.
Yeah. Exactly. So, is this our first plant metaphor?
I don't know if it's the first, but it's definitely a memorable one, considering it's one that, like I said, they reference again later in the series. I don't remember there being a plant metaphor before this one.
Yeah, and I neither do I. So, do you remember what exactly is said? Like, because I just remember he said something about like the maturity and being mature.
Corey says, oh, you're putting my puny little plant out here. And Feeny says, well, your plant, which is small now, if you water it and nurture it, it'll grow and flourish. And, as long as it has a proper gardener. And there's just this real cutesy moment between Feeny and Corey, just really describing the whole mentor relationship. And I think this is like the Feeny lesson for the whole season. Like, this is the... I Feeny told me is that like with the right nurturing and maturing, like with the proper gardener, you could really flourish, and with the right teacher, you can really do well in life. And I thought that was a really cool teaching moment.
Yeah, very much so. So that was it. was the episode. I mean,
we have our epilogue.
We're going into the epilogue, but I just want to say that overall was the
last episode.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so with our epilogue, we have our final scene with Minkus.
And I really feel like he just got such a raw deal with this. Like, there wasn't a whole lot of thought that was felt like it was put behind this. Maybe they didn't know he was going to come back. I don't know
because the way, again, I was going to talk about this, and I'm glad that you said something. The way that they do this scene, it kind of says to me that they did have no plan on bringing Minkus back. You know what I mean? So those epilogue scene is all about the power of thinking, and they're trying to do this experiment where, as a group, the 4 kids try to light the light bulb, and instead Corey and Sean, because Minkus goes on this whole speech, and I like it because what he says is, Sean literally says to him, "Funny last words." You know what I mean? And I paid attention to see, it's these are some of Minkus's last words up until we see him later in the season, season 5, right?
Yeah, he is in the last episode of season 5.
Exactly. But outside of that, then we so from the end of this episode until season 5, we don't see him anymore. And that made me think that, no, they knew that they weren't going to bring this character back. And I'm with you that I don't think it was a great send-off, but it did tell me that there was some foresight into this.
Let's go back to a theory we had in, I believe, our first episode, where we talked about how Corey, you exist based on how important you are in Corey's life.
Correct.
And we have these instances where Minkus just disappears, in the show in some gimmicky way, but really just never comes back. Or, later on, Mr. Turner gets into this horrible bike accident and we never see him again. So maybe it's really that, for whatever reason, maybe Minkus moves away, goes to a different school. Maybe Mr. Turner does get better and just doesn't come back to class. We don't see them or their story develop or anything because they're not involved in Corey's life anymore.
Yeah, no, I think that's relevant. I think that because I thought about it and I was like, for the stories that they want to tell, Minkus honestly wouldn't fit in to those. I'm vaguely remembering, but Minkus works really well in this class because he is kind of forced. Him and Corey are forced to be in a room together, where it's just not as needed in the later seasons, especially when you go to high school.
Well, in high school, too, you get to kind of choose your friends a little bit more because you're not just confined to one class group.
Right.
They're not seeing Minkus all the time.
Yep.
You would be in more advanced classes anyway, I'd assume.
Exactly.
Later on, they refer to it as the other side of the school.
Yeah.
And there's just, Minkus was there to challenge the ideas of the boys as they were kind of figuring out the world. But the whole thesis of the second season isn't this boy meets world. It's where do we fit in now? And now that we're in this world, and it's an entirely different thing with different groups and different ideas.
There are already other people who will naturally challenge Corey and Sean.
Yes, and in more, in this season, they're basically the bullies to Minkus.
Yep.
So what happens in the next season when they get introduced to people who will bully them? And that feeling when you're in middle school and you go to high school, from being at the top of the food chain to the bottom of the food chain.
Yep.
I don't know that Minkus has a role to play in that.
No, and it's that's what makes me think that they thought this through. But I still feel that, to even do so in kind of an epilogue. To be fair, they didn't really have to acknowledge it, because I did notice, I was Morgan isn't in this episode at all.
Eric is hardly in the episode.
Yeah. So, to be fair, at least Minkus did get something of a final scene. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was the episode. Feeny taught me. What do you have?
I think the lesson, honestly, is probably the one Alan says about Mrs. Perch.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know that Corey didn't do anything wrong. Like, he feels guilty the entire episode for something that he didn't do. So it's hard for me to be like, oh, Corey, learned, from his, like with Feeny. If anything, he just learned to appreciate people more. So
yeah, that's what the thing I was going to say. It's just like learn that my takeaway from this episode is that you should be appreciative of the people, while you can, and then also that your thoughts matter. It's just like it's not saying that you can make someone sick, but yeah, just wishing ill towards someone. Be careful, because when it happens, you may regret.
And what comes around and around and around.
That was a very stupid but funny joke. I loved when they did that.
Yeah.
Okay, so what grade are you giving it?
C+.
And you know what? I will give you that. I will agree with a C+. It
was okay. It was. I don't think it was the finale worthy, but.
Yeah, no, and that's what I'm saying. It's like I don't disagree with you. It wasn't the greatest. I don't think we even use everyone as well as we've done in previous episodes. But it just had good moments.
What's funny is I think the next time Minkus appears in that graduation episode, I think that is the best finale of the entire series. So to think about that and then come to think about this, I'm like, this is weak sauce.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree. Okay, so that was our episode. Thank you so much for listening to Bruh Meets World.
Yay, we're done with season 1, guys.
Yeah, we're done with season 1. Wow, so a brand new season ahead.
Brand new season ahead. Obviously, we're going to do a recap episode of all of season 1 of some fun stuff.
Yeah, we're going to do an entire episode on season 1. As we said, we'll give you the final grades of the entire season. We have some fun things planned. And I think you guys are going to enjoy it.
And then after that, it's on to season 2, y'all. Harley Kiner, Shelby the Rat.
Yeah,
Frankie, the Enforcer. It's happening, y'all.
I'm so excited. I do love Frankie. I love that whole little group. They're fun.
They're so great. And Mr. Turner, honestly, is a great addition to the show. Like, his relationship with Sean, I think is later on mirrored with Eric and Feeny. Just like these great teacher-mentor roles. And these relationships you don't see on television anywhere else. So
yeah,
really excited for it.
All right, remember you can find us on Spotify,
Ayo,
iTunes, and Stitcher. Yeah, find us, or wherever. I'm sure we're out there. Make sure you leave us a rating. Again, we've had a few. We always enjoy it when you do. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Bruh Meets World, or email us at bruhmeetsworld@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at Extra Ceej. That's XTRACEEJ. TC.
A brave of me on IG.
Good for you. And you guys, remember to dream, try, and do what, TC?
Oh, dream, try, and do good, guys.
All right.
Do good.
Later, bros.
Later, bruh.